Well, we're a little late, so I'm going to get started. Well, welcome everyone, both in person and virtual. I'm going to invite our in-person people to actually move up in this room. You don't have to take my invitation, but you look so far away back there, so we'd love to see you in the light. And for those of you that are on both medias, this is the FORTE session, NRG CC005. And just to remind everyone, next slide. Oh, now I have the clicker. This is our large randomized trial to look at colonoscopy for our 1 to 2 non-advanced adenomas. And the whole goal is we don't know whether you need every 5-year or a 10-year colonoscopy. And just think, if we show that it's non-inferior for one to have a 10-year, it's a patient savings and a huge cost savings for our nation. So this is a really, really important trial. And I'm just showing all of the great accrual, and I thank all of you in the audience that have it open and are participating. And I urge those in the audience, both here and on the Zoom world, if you don't have it open, please consider. It's a great trial to have open at your cancer center or NCOR, because once you kind of start rolling, you can actually get a lot of accruals, which will help you. And depending on what your setup is with the NCI, I'm an NCOR, and if we do really well and sort of go surpass our enrollment goals, you're actually eligible for more funding in the future. So just to give you a snapshot at where we are today, right now we're doing really well. We're a little shy, but very, very, very little shy of our NCI goal. Right now, I think our accrual is about 780. It shows you 750 on this slide, but we're doing so well, like we've beat the slide already. But we are held by the NCI to have an accrual of 950 at the end of September. So we need all of your help to do that. And then next year, our enrollment goals are even higher. So again, we urge everyone to help us get this trial done. Well, next I want to introduce Dr. Jeffrey Duker, who's going to review the trial's progress. And just to remind everyone, he's one of our great co-investigators with Dr. Schoen, who's done a tremendous amount to promote this trial. And he's at the University of Pittsburgh. And I just also want to remind everybody that we've been trying on all of these trials, but especially FORTE, to publicize it in social media. And I know I myself am at fault. I press the heart button and I'm a liker. But it would be great if folks can actually tweet about it, especially those that have it open. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I am a tweeter as well, so you can find me, and we have the FORTE study on Twitter as well. So I just want to build on all the things that Lisa talked about, and please feel free to ask questions. We have a group online. If you're online, please ask questions as well. But we're happy to, make this a sort of a working meeting and answer any burning questions you have. So just to review, we went over this. We really don't know the correct or the most appropriate interval for surveillance colonoscopy. So if you have a colonoscopy and you're average risk and you have no polyps, we tell you to come back in 10 years. If you have 1 or 2 non-advanced adenomas, which means they don't have high-grade dysplasia and they're less than 10 millimeters, we have you repeat surveillance in 5 to 10 years. It depends a little bit on the pathology. The guidelines used to be 5 to 10 years for tubular adenomas. They changed the guidelines to 7 to 10 years, but for sessile adenomas, it's still 5 to 10 years. So there's still just a lot of ambiguity about what the correct surveillance interval is. I did want to say, right now, the current observational data suggests that patients with no polyps on a colonoscopy have the same colon cancer risk as those with 1 to 2 non-advanced adenomas. So this is a visual display of the same thing. So the black line is advanced adenomas. These are clearly higher risk lesions. You can see that their colon cancer incidence is higher. However, both the non-advanced adenoma and the no adenoma groups are pretty similar out to 15 years from the index colonoscopy. So you may say, wait, we already have the data, why are we doing the trial? The big issue is that in the adenoma group, so if you had your colonoscopy, say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and you had adenomas, you were getting more colonoscopies than the patients who did not have an adenoma. Remember the guidelines, 5 to 10 years. So these patients are getting colonoscopies, they're getting polyps out. So we don't know if that observed risk at 15 years is because they were low risk to begin with, or because the additional colonoscopies and additional polyp removal, by the way, they're finding polyps and remove them at these other colonoscopies, is decreasing the risk. So that's why we think we need this trial. We went over this. This is a randomized trial. Patients are randomized 1-to-1 to a surveillance colonoscopy every 5 years or a surveillance colonoscopy in 10 years, and we're doing non-inferiority comparison. Another interesting aspect of the study is about how we're finding participants. You may think, okay, a patient has a colonoscopy, they have 1 to 2 small adenomas, you enroll them and you randomize them and you go forward. What we're allowing for is colonoscopies for our participants to be done up to 4 years ago. So you've had your colonoscopy, you've had 1 to 2 adenomas, and you're waiting for your next surveillance. We can go ahead and still enroll you and decrease some of that lead time to the first intervention time point. So we think that this also can help recruitment, because at any given GI practice, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of patients who have already had a colonoscopy with 1 to 2 adenomas that are just waiting potentially to be randomized into FORTE. So there's already a big pile of people to address at the beginning. So we were at 767 last week and 781 as of an hour ago, which is fantastic. So I don't know how many times you're checking CTSU. We have to check maybe like once a day or a couple times a day to see the numbers go up, which is good. We have 17 networks, lots of sites, but 17 networks that have enrolled a patient, mainly driven by 5 networks with big numbers. So you may say, oh, wait a minute, what are the other 12 doing? That's not the point. The point is that it's very easy, relatively speaking, to get large numbers of patients for all the reasons I was talking about. So we have 5 networks that are getting many, many patients. I think the lowest is 30 or 40, but the highest is 400. And this is within 18 months or so. So networks are coming online, and those networks can recruit huge numbers. So you may say, wow, you need a lot of patients. Yes, we do, but a lot of patients are possible, and these sort of front-running networks are showing us how they can get big numbers into the trial. So we hit 700 4 weeks ago. Our goal is 1,000 by September, and we've been 70 or more a month for 5 months in a row, and that's only going up. So I'm focusing on our successes, but of course, as you saw from the prior slides, we need to keep the pace up to keep getting the recruitment goals high. But our sites and our networks have been very successful. So we're really off to the races, and I want you to join us. This is the FORTE horse, which we bought with our research allocation funds. The nice part is if it wins, we can fund a lot of future research. No, this was an independent event, but pretty cool that there is a FORTE horse. So please join us. Really, really wanted to end before I introduce Rocky with thanks to our sites for participating, and of course to our participants for enrolling. People are signing up, as you can tell, and we hope to just generate more interest and answer any questions you have today. So with that, I'll turn it over to Rocky.
Thank you, Jeff. Again, it's a pleasure to be here, and I welcome the audience. I titled this, Don't Miss Out, okay? Why am I saying that? Surveillance colonoscopy is a really important problem. It affects a lot of us. The issue of surveillance is you see that first colonoscopy, you find a polyp, and then the question is, when should you come back? And in the United States, we are doing about 15 million colonoscopies a year. Fully a quarter of them are for surveillance. That's close to 4 million a year. At least 25% of people have non-advanced adenomas on colonoscopy, and that number is rising because our detection techniques are improving, AI, all kinds of things. That number may even reach 50% of people have small little adenomas. And so we need to know what to do because the system is going to be overwhelmed. It already is getting overwhelmed. Now, what is the data on benefit? This is a study from the United Kingdom that I thought I would share with you. It's a retrospective study with a follow-up of 9 years, and they classified people into low, medium, and high-risk polyps. Obviously, that low-risk group is exactly where FORTE is, 1 or 2 non-advanced adenomas measuring less than 10 millimeters. And you could ask the question, okay, did surveillance, they particularly were looking retrospectively at surveillance, and this was a group of 14,000 people, and you can see if you had no surveillance, your cancer rate over the course of the observation period was 169 per 100,000 person years of observation. And now we say, well, what if you had surveillance? And look, the rate drops tremendously by 44% with one surveillance and even more with more surveillance, to suggest surveillance is valuable. It may really be protective. And so the notion that we can just go to 10 years on everybody, that may not be right. We need to really do the trial to understand the benefit of surveillance. This is not perfect data, it's retrospective, it has a lot of other issues, but it points to the fact that we can't just disregard the potential benefit of surveillance. If you look at all the UK studies, in every risk group, low, medium, and high, surveillance is associated with a significant reduction in subsequent cancer. This is another study that we did, a modeling study, that tried to answer the question, what is the contribution of surveillance to colorectal cancer prevention apart from the initial colonoscopy that got you into surveillance? And the answer was about 30% of overall cancer prevention was attributable to surveillance. So again, the data suggests that surveillance does have some value, and how to apportion it is clearly an important problem. What's the purpose, the bottom line purpose of FORTE? To determine whether a colonoscopy at 5 years is beneficial. One of the coordinators spoke up at one of the presentations I made yesterday and said, all our people want to go to 10 years. They're happy when they get randomized to 10 years. Great. I mean, we need to know, can we go to 10 or do we need the 5? And this is the way to answer the question. Now, in terms of a site perspective, or even an individual perspective, or a coordinator perspective, FORTE is really an opportunity to participate in a landmark, clinically significant trial that clearly is going to affect and inform clinical practice. So this is my slide, FOMO and FORTE. I'm really glad that I know what FOMO is, fear of missing out. FORTE, as I say, is a trial of significant importance. FORTE participation will improve your overall trial enrollments, your center enrollment status. For example, UPMC, that's where I'm at. It is now the leading LAPS recruiting site in the country. And I can tell you why, because of the 130 patients that we've enrolled in FORTE. Kaiser and Metro Minnesota are the 2 leading NCORE recruitment sites. Again, both of them have very substantial recruitments into FORTE. So FORTE is a real opportunity to advance your center, and you're going to be answering an important clinical problem. In terms of enrollment, what we've observed over this last year in particular is that the best sites have 2 things going for them. One is they have a team of coordinators who are dedicating serious time to this endeavor, but it works. They're getting people in. Obviously, you must work with GI practices. There is an issue about how to quickly identify eligibles and focus your attention to eligibles, and we have a natural language processing provider that can work with your site and help you do that. Many sites, not all, but some, have implemented this $40, either call it a travel allowance if they're traveling to your site, or an enrollment incentive. That's okay. And that is working, I can tell you. And we now are about to model what we call e-consent and mobile blood draw, which means the patient doesn't even have to come to our center at all. We arrange the consent, and then we are literally going to send a blood drawing company out to their home to draw the blood. Now, that costs money, but again, you are paid to be part of this, and it's kind of budget neutral when it comes down to it, and it gets more people into the trial. And so you get your enrollment resources from enrolling people. And we are doing this at UPMC, and we're very optimistic that this is going to even further generate our numbers. So with that, I will introduce, I don't know if there are questions, or we're going to wait at the end for questions. No questions. Great. So let me introduce Lisa Beaverson from Columbus, who can talk to us about the specimen collection that's part of the FORTE trial. You just advance the
Thank you. Just as a disclaimer, I'm speaking only about the stool specimens. There are, tissue does go to the bank in Pittsburgh, and then the serum bank in Baylor does receive blood. So I'm only going to discuss the stool specimens today. So I have no disclosures. So stool is collected at 3 times for this study, and it's submitted to the bank in Columbus. We do provide kits that sites can order on our kit management website. The kits include a collection tube, a toilet accessory to help capture the stool, a spatula, and lots of instructions. We also provide a shipping box, shipping supplies, and we include a prepaid air bill so that the patients can easily ship the stool. So the steps for collection. The site staff will order and receive the kit. At the time they're meeting with the patient, they would label the collection tube. They would also provide the kit and a completed transmittal form to the participant, and then they should review the instructions carefully with the participant, since the participant will be collecting the specimen on their own at home. So then the participant will take the kit home and collect the stool sample. They will document the collection date on both the sample and the transmittal form, and then they will ship the sample back to the bank with the transmittal form. And then once we receive the stool, we will process it, and then we bank it until time for distribution for research. So as of July 6th, we've provided 876 kits to 40 sites. We have received 490 samples from 20 sites. And everything at this point has been the baseline time point, all the samples. So of the samples we've received, 354 were deemed acceptable. And all that means is that when we receive it, we visually inspect it, and we can see that the specimen looks correct, it has the proper labeling, and it includes the paperwork that we anticipate to receive. So there were 136 samples that had some type of issue, or what we would call at the bank an inadequacy at the time of receipt. So the most frequent issue is labeling of the specimen. And of the labeling issues, the #1 issue is lack of collection date on the tube. Now this is added by the participant, so this is something that the participant is the only one who can add because they're collecting it at home. Other labeling problems would be missing other things such as the participant ID, the bank ID, or maybe the specimen code. We've also had cases where there's discrepancies between the labeling on the transmittal form and the labeling on the collection tube. And then we've had several cases where there's no labeling on the collection tube whatsoever. So when there is an error in the labeling or on a specimen received, we do reach out to the site and try to confirm the labeling. For 16 samples, we couldn't confirm and correct the labeling. That doesn't mean the sample's not usable, it just means that there may be something on it that we haven't really been able to confirm. So there are some other issues. The biggest one is overfilling of the collection tube. The patients are very eager, they want to do a good job, so they're filling the tube with stool. And in one case, the participant not only filled the tube, they also filled a bag for us. So we had an additional specimen. Sometimes the participant is pouring the stabilizing agent and the mixing ball out of the tube before adding the stool. I'm assuming it's because, again, they want to do a good job and provide the maximum amount of stool. We've had cases with no transmittal form. A few cases have come to us with neither labeling on the tube or a transmittal form, and Kristen has really helped me track down the site to figure out who the patient belongs to. Because with this study, we're providing prepaid air bills, so we don't have contact information from the site on the air bill to fall back on. So I rely on Kristen to help me out. But as we get more patients enrolled and more sites involved, that's going to become harder. So we also received one tube that was not closed correctly and leaking, but we were able to process and use that sample. So the tube in the kit does have the special reagent that maintains the viability until we receive the sample. So removing that reagent, overfilling the tube, or not shaking the tube to mix the stool with the reagent, or removing the mixing ball will all impact specimen integrity and then the downstream research. So here is what the tube looks like, and you can see the reagent and the mixing ball. There's also a picture of the spatula, and I brought one as a visual cue. This is the size of the spatula. So in our insert that comes with the tube, there is an instruction that shows exactly how much of the fecal sample is needed. So you can see this is the spatula, so a very small amount is needed. And that way, it can really be penetrated by the stabilizing agent in the collection tube. So our conclusion is, unlike institutional staff, the study participants, they're not experienced with collecting specimens or completing transmittal form or even shipping the specimens. As I said, the air bills provided don't provide a return address, so the site is not identified on the air bill. So what we've tried to do to improve some of this is we have updated the instructions that are provided to both the site staff and the participants, kind of trying to hone in on these problem areas. And those, I think, Kristen said they're approved now and they will be released soon. Is that correct? Or they're in process? They're going through the process. So they will be released to everyone as soon as they have IRB approval. So things that you can do to help is make sure that you carefully review the information provided by the study team and the bank with the participant before having them collect the stool. Emphasize some of these problem areas, like the collection date, adding that to both the tube and the transmittal. Really emphasize that a small amount of stool is needed and point out that step 3 on the instructions. Because of course the patient's gonna think that as much sample as they can provide is what's needed, just more is better. I totally can understand that. Also, remind the patient to include the transmittal form when they ship the stool back to the bank. So make sure that you label the tube before you provide it to the patient. The requirements are in the pathology and correlative science instructions. And then make sure that you send a completed transmittal form. Now, there's things you won't be able to put the collection date on, but everything that you know, please complete on the transmittal form. And then emphasize that the form should be included with the shipment to the biobank. So I think as we're ramping up, we're getting more patients on study, I thought now was a good time to really address some of these and make you aware of some of the issues we've seen, because we're collecting the specimens, we really want to have them optimal to do the research that we want to do. So here's my acknowledgments. Especially I want to thank Kristen. The sites submitting specimens are doing a good job, but Linda from UPMC really has had a high success rate, and the lab wanted me to really especially point her out of the good job she's doing. And then I'd like to thank all the study participants who are taking the time to collect the stool, and a special thanks to those who are adding the collection date. So that's all I have. Does anyone have any questions? You can always reach, oh, okay, go ahead.
Hello, this is Abdul Muhsin from the Upstate Carolina Incorp. I have a suggestion. It's not a question, actually. Since you guys are like gonna be sending the lab to collect the blood, why not they will also collect the stool and send it to you? And that way you will like be almost certain that the stool sample is gonna get very like accurate and to your liking.
I guess I could answer that. It's certainly a consideration. However, the number of people where the blood draw is going to be done remotely, that remains to be determined yet. It's still nascent. In fact, we haven't had any yet, so it's just something that's planned. Secondly, you know, timing the stool collection to the time that we're going to come and draw your blood, that may be a little bit complicated for a patient. So right now, we're at about 70% compliance, which is pretty good. We'd like to do better, and you know, we have some thoughts about that. But I think really right now our focus is we need to get more people in, and then from there we'll address these other issues.
Yeah, and as sites, if you have any questions about the stool collection, or please reach out to the bank. We're glad to talk to you or provide any advice that might be helpful. I didn't also address, there is a stool questionnaire. I didn't really talk about that because that does not come to Columbus. That is shipped separately. So that is another thing that you need to remember to do and give to the patient. So thank you, and thanks for allowing me time to discuss the stool collection.
Hi, my name is Michelle. I am with VisionTree, and I'm joined by Martin Pellinot, VisionTree's founder. I'm just going to give a brief presentation on how VisionTree supports the FORTE trial, and then I'll pass it over to Martin, who's going to do a quick demo. So VisionTree is an electronic patient-reported outcomes platform, and we support this trial with our quality of life forms. Our ePros have been used for 11 studies in NRG and RTOG since 2011, and we have 5 more coming. And here we have the first study with RTOG that became a publication in 2013, showing how compliance increased by 70% in 6 months to 1 year. This study shows that ePros also save the RA 10 minutes per patient by not having to mail the forms or call the patients over the phone. Since that study, we have fully integrated with Metadata Rave, and what that means for you is that you can log in to Rave and see when a form has been completed the second it's saved. VisionTree also has other interoperability integrations with Epic and Cerner. We're also happy to share those with you. The steps for utilizing, pardon me, VisionTree with this trial are very simple. Once you have your IRB approval, you will receive your VisionTree login, and then once you log in, you'll receive the FORTE dropdown. Martin will go over that with you in his demonstration. We encourage you to join any of our VisionTree trainings. We have them monthly, with our next one coming up on August 9th. Again, we support it with our quality of life forms, and I will pass it over to Martin for a brief demonstration.
Thank you, Michelle. So we just wanted to show you all how to log into the VisionTree system. Many of you are using VisionTree for various NRG oncology trials. If you are, then the FORTE trial will be an additional drop-down for a template selection to create a patient account. If this is your first time using VisionTree, you'll just see the FORTE trial. To access VisionTree, you would be going to rtog.optimalcare.com, and you'd be logging as a care team member. And so we'll go ahead and do that right now. And we'll do that on the demo system. So logged in as a care team member, you'll be able to create a new patient in the trial. You'll be putting in the patient's initials. So we'll do NRG. And also an email address. The study is CC005. And with that, you'll also have an example of ensuring that the case number is put in correctly with its schema. And then lastly, you'll select the template. Again, if it's just the FORTE trial, then you'll just see the one template. If you are participating in multiple studies, you'll have multiple templates to select from. And by selecting that template, the baseline forms will be assigned to the patient. I believe that case number had already been used. It's possible also that we had used that same patient as a test patient. So going to the lookup page, we'll look up that patient that we just created. And we have that patient right here. We'll see that those baseline forms have been assigned to this patient's record. They're all listed right here. They're highlighted in green with the green dot. Of course, yes. Hi, everybody. Sorry about that. So we are just showing you now how you are logged into the care team side and are accessing a patient's account that you've just created and assigned a FORTE template. You'll see all the forms that are assigned right here. You can also review the patient's credentials and ensure that they have consented to the trial. You also have the ability to send them login information and also what's called a fast track email. This is automatically sent to them when you create a patient account, but if you need to resend the patient a fast track link, you could do that here from the Perform Actions tab. And by clicking on that fast track link, I have just sent myself a fast track email right here to my own email address. And as a patient, I'm going to click on the link and put in my initials, and that will launch the forms that I need to complete. And we're just working with the hotel internet here. Yes, but while the fast track is coming up, let me also show you all that you can launch what's called kiosk mode. That's at point of care. So as you're in the patient's record, you can hand the patient a tablet to complete the forms, or they can also use a QR code that's brought up. And again, this is just the internet being a little bit finicky here, but there's a QR code that they can snap on their own device or launch the kiosk mode, in the waiting room. So we did have now fast track just come up on my email, and I will put in my initials. And this brings up the 6 baseline forms that need to be completed. So this is something that the patient can fill out from their desktop, computer at home, from their smartphone. It all formats to the mobile device that they're on. And as they complete these forms, it will take them to the next form. So there's a progress meter that will take them through all the forms in one sitting. There's also a language selector, so the patient can choose English or Spanish, and it will remember the language of their choice throughout the remainder of the forms that they complete. Back on the care team side, you're also able to check out the compliance of patients completing their forms. So there is a forms compliance report that you can select, and again, this may take a second for it to load, but there we go. We have CC005 selected here, and we'll say let's generate a report to check out our compliance. This will give you how many days to delinquency you have for the form to be filled out, and you can also ad hoc send a fast track here to the patient to complete those forms. And now I showed you fast track as well as the kiosk mode, which is a tablet or a QR code on site. Lastly, there's also a patient portal where the patients can log in with their initials and a password. They can go to the forms tile right here, and they can complete all their forms in a patient portal format. So that is an overarching review of how to create a patient and how the patients complete their forms. And definitely happy to answer any questions. As Michelle said, we have our support team here that's available for you 24/7 and monthly refresher trainings. And there may be a question right here regarding
what happens if the patient isn't plugged in? We're in a minority center, and less than 20% of our patients are on the internet or have email. They just don't. So what happens? Can we do this? Do we have to bring them in to do this? And they're not going to have it at home. They're not going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
What do we do?
There may be a response from, on the paper side or the...
Yeah, we have paper forms. We have many people doing paper forms.
good.
So this is just another option.
Good. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Judy Langard, Team Director of Regulatory for NRG. As we were working through getting our translated documents, Spanish documents for the whole of the trial, one of the things that kind of caught my attention was there is an FAQ for patients to follow, screenshots and everything. We put that through IRB review. But I'm curious, how does the patient get to the forms? You know, even in your demonstration, it wasn't until you were pretty far in that there was a choice for English versus Spanish. Maybe that's different on the patient portal side, but is all of that introductory part only in English?
Yes, so the UI is in English, and the form does have the language translation at the top right corner. So that is the first place that they would have the ability to select the language translation. So that should be communicated to the patient, and that is just how we have the system set up right now.
So from a regulatory perspective, I would recommend that you maybe look into having, when the patient is going into it, the first thing the patient can do is choose English or Spanish. Because unless that patient has that document right next to them with the screenshots, which are IRB approved, because it's patient directed, unless they have that with them, I can't imagine as a Spanish-speaking patient trying to navigate that.
Yeah, no, that's excellent feedback, and that is actually something that we could implement very quickly, is on the first consent step, is to have that language selection as opposed to getting to the form. So we will take that feedback and put that in place right away.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And then I have a question from the virtual audience. They're asking about, they have IRB approval, but they want to know if they're able to access VisionTree before enrolling a patient, or do they need to wait until they have that first subject randomized? I don't know if that would be one for you or one for maybe data management. The site has IRB approval, and they want to know if they can access VisionTree before enrolling a patient. Or do they need to wait until they have that first subject randomized?
So you won't have a patient ID until you randomize a patient. So you can maybe go to the Vision Tree website, but you can't do anything about a patient.
Can we provide a test patient that, test set of forms so that if a site wants to get some practice or get some exposure to this, they can do that before they actually have a live body?
Yes, definitely. We could have a test patient available for the site so that they could not only practice with it, but also show the patients what they're going to experience.
And then I have another question from the virtual audience. A site wants to confirm that they now have 3 months to complete the Vision Tree questionnaires online now versus the 30 to 45 days they had before. Is that correct? Is 3 months to complete the forms the current timeline? Does anybody? Yes, it is. I got acknowledgement from data management. Yes, it is 3 months.
Sorry, I don't know. Is it on? Yeah. Oh. Hannah Bandas, statistician for this trial, but since we are communicating with the sites a lot, we had some questions about the Vision Tree. It still has the RTOG account as a primary title, and it seems like the concern was that patients are not familiar with what RTOG is. Since this is the NRG trial, we were just wondering if there is any opportunity to change that in terms of the landing page for the Vision Tree.
Yes, we definitely could consider that, and that is really just a subdomain. That subdomain was set up specifically so that patients would put in their initials. If you go to optimalcare.com, you would have first and last name versus initials. So, definitely some great feedback and ideas from this meeting today, and that would be one of them, is to work with the NRG group to see if it should be NRG Oncology.optimalcare or FORTE. Quite frankly, that's something else that we could consider, because we don't want to have FOMO. But no, these are great ideas, so
thank you.
We'll definitely take that back.
I have one more question from the virtual audience. This might be yet another for data management, so don't sit down. In regards to Vision Tree, if a patient withdraws from the study, does NRG work with Vision Tree to communicate the withdrawal, or does the site need to contact Vision Tree to communicate the withdrawal? We're getting an answer from data management.
I thought that we saw that there was an option in Vision Tree that the site could go in and withdraw the patient. Is that true?
Yes, so they can do that within the Vision Tree platform. If you go here into the Overview tab.
We're not seeing his slides on the screen.
And we just went into the patient's record here on the lookup page and clicked the Overview tab. And the Overview tab is a place that you could suppress the PROs and disable their consent. So that would be a place that you could self-manage that.
Can someone remind me, I know we had an issue with the emails from Vision Tree being considered spam-like from a patient perspective, and that was something that we were going to address.
I can probably quickly speak, and I'll thank Vision Tree for accommodating that, but I believe one of the decisions was that now in the email subject, there is a note that this is an email from your site, and then the site comes into play. So I think that was a great decision that we could implement that. So thank you.
Yes, and you end up using our communication center, which allows you to customize the email communication. So I think we started off with a generic email and then made it a customized email. So we appreciate that feedback.
So I have three things I want to ask about. Number one, can these forms be done over the phone with the patient? That's number one. And
I believe that's possible, but I'm not a coordinator, and
correct.
We'd have to.
Are you asking about vision tree forms or just the patient-reported outcomes forms in general, the questionnaires?
The form in general.
Yes, they can be done via telephone or email. We prefer telephone if your staff has the time to do that because you're more likely to get the responses that way. But mail is also an acceptable means, and if you're going to be mailing them the questionnaire and asking them to mail it back, we request that you include a self-addressed stamped envelope to increase your return rate. But if it hasn't come back in about a week or so, call the patient and follow up just to be sure, the participant, call them and follow up to remind them that they need to send it back.
Okay. The other couple of things is, one, have you thought about like sending tablets to the sites and have them to have it so that way it's already there, they can just get it done, and that would be it.
I do think that would be a really valuable thing in the clinic setting. I will say actually a lot of our successful enrollments in this trial are done completely remotely actually. Probably actually vast majority, over half of them are actually purely done remotely where the consent is achieved over the phone and everything. So, but in a clinic setting, that would definitely be something to explore.
And we are doing that. We have that opportunity, I know at UPMC, and we have, when we have a patient coming on site, we try to get them to do all the forms before they leave.
Correct. The last thing, let's say the site signed the patient don't have time and they have to come back. Have you thought about like putting like an incentive for them to come back and do the baseline, like a gift card of $20 or something like this?
Yes, I mentioned in my talk, we are doing $40 as an initial for the baseline visit. Either you can call it a travel allowance or you can call it an enrollment incentive if they're not actually traveling. But many sites have implemented that, and it definitely is increasing enrollment.
All right, thank you.
The notion here is that there is enough reimbursement in the trial that you could take some of your reimbursement and use it for programs like that. And we are doing that, and we think it makes economic sense because you're spending $40 to get a $1,500 enrollment fee. So if you can get more people in the trial with that, it makes a lot of sense.
All right, thank you.
Can I ask one more question about the vision tree? So when the participant completes the form, can they stop in the middle, like save their progress, and then come back later, or they would have to complete the whole form right away?
Yeah, so their progress is saved if they step away, so it's automatically saved. They are able to jump into the following form, so if they're on a course of 6 forms, they can fill out 1 and then come back to number 2. As far as saving the form partway, I would need to check on that. I know we have that capability. I just don't want to say that that's been configured for this trial, but if it's something that we need to look into and make sure is put in place, we can. But we do have that capability as far as the system goes.
And that would be like trial-specific request then, right? Or?
Yeah, I think what we would just need to do is configure it and test it, and then let you know that it's been deployed.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Liao. I am the FORTE Education and Communications Specialist with NRG Oncology Ops in Pittsburgh. I'm happy to be here in Philly with all of you, and of course the virtual audience. I'm sure there's many of you on there. I'm just here to give some brief updates about FORTE in terms of kind of videos and questionnaires. A lot of the questions that were asked actually was, we have a slide about that today. First things first, I do want to mention that we have created a great number of videos featuring our wonderful protocol co-chairs and of course some of the coordinators that are working on FORTE that are designed to help you promote and share information about FORTE. Very importantly, the ones highlighted in red on this slide, the Why Join the FORTE study, FORTE 5 and 10 versus 10-year colonoscopy, and What is FORTE are all CIRB approved for patient viewing. So all of these videos can be sent out on social media. That is something that we requested. You can also put them, you know, if you have an option to put videos up in a clinic for promotional materials. Each of these videos are available and can also be sent to participants to answer any questions they have about NRG CC005. They cover a lot of different perspectives. So the other video I would like to highlight is the first video that we made, which is a site-facing video, which can also answer some questions and kind of succinctly mention some of the things that we were mentioning today about why your NCORE, NRG, or other core sites would want to participate in FORTE and be a part of this landmark clinical trial. I do want to mention here again that all of the cooperative groups are welcome to activate and accrue to FORTE. We would definitely love to have you on board, so if you have any questions about that, feel free to contact us. Contact information will be at the end of this presentation. The next couple of videos we do have are GI facing, because we have heard a lot of feedback from the different sites that, you know, these are all, we're very familiar with cancer trials, but this is a little bit different. It is a cancer prevention trial that definitely has to work with gastroenterology. And so we have a couple of videos that explain why these trials should, why these doctors would want to participate and have their patients be a part of this trial. It highlights and explains different aspects about what would be valuable to them. And we also have Dr. Ertem, who is a gastroenterologist working on FORTE, kind of talking through why he is invested in this trial from the Spartanburg Medical Center. We encourage you to distribute these to your different gastroenterologist networks. This is the patient recruitment video. Again, this is CIRB approved and gives a general outline and can be used for promotion and can be viewed prior to consenting a patient to the FORTE study that tells them about the trial and why they should be a part of it. We have also created 2 new videos. These were actually recorded at the last NRG meeting. The purposes of them were to answer some very frequently asked questions about FORTE. We've heard specific feedback about patient concern about whether it would be too risky for them to wait 10 years to have a follow-up colonoscopy. So we created a video with Dr. Schoen and one of the coordinators from Maine Health who did kind of a little demonstration of how to have a conversation around this 10-year colonoscopy. And of course, that is our FORTE mascot, and it is on the What is FORTE video that is much more informational and also can be sent to patients and promoted on different platforms and to encourage people to find out more about NRG CC005. This was my slide about the FORTE questionnaires because a lot of questions have actually come up about it. There are definitely different ways to do it other than Vision Tree, as we understand that there have been sites that have mentioned, you know, their patients may be less comfortable with technology or may not have access to the internet at any given time. So the options, of course, you could do these over the phone. I know some sites are doing an in-person patient visit, although, again, a lot of our sites are doing pretty much everything related to this trial remotely. the last couple of options, if specifically requested, you would be able to mail these forms. The SDMC people addressed some steps to take to ensure that we will get these questionnaires back from the participant in those cases. And EMR review is an option, but we really do want to encourage you to try to get in contact with your participants as much as possible. That is kind of the last option if you are unable to contact them. And also, as always, any communications materials, anything that we have related to NRG CC005 can be found on CTSU once you have logged in. We all know you have to do that every 30 minutes, but anything that is CIRB approved will be on the CIRB approved tab, and protocol-related documents, highly encourage you to check it every month because we definitely put out accrual updates, newsletters, any information that we have received, memos, definitely at least on a monthly basis, if not more. So thank you so much for having me. Here is the contact information for the NRG CC005 FORTE team out of the Pittsburgh office. The CCD is definitely very responsive to this, and we are happy to help you with anything that you have regarding this trial. And now we are going to move to more Q&A, which was built into the agenda. So if anybody has any questions, virtual or otherwise, please feel free to speak up again. I see someone.
Yeah, I just had a question about the study is designated as more than minimal risk, and so our local site has policies around having the physician explain those risk alternatives, benefits and alternatives to the patient and completing the consent process. So we are working through a process now of having APP providers involved as a delegated provider to help with that process. I'm just saying this just to see if other sites that are onboarding have seen this them as well, or if there's any other recommendations, suggestions on how to navigate.
I can tell you, I'm pretty certain that of the 781 patients that we've enrolled in this trial so far, all of them have been consented by research coordinators and not by physicians in person. And, you know, the IRBs are certainly aware of this. This has all, you know, been blessed, and that is the approach that is almost universally being taken.
Well, not to contradict you, but one patient was consented in person by our radiation oncologist because, just like Mark, our healthcare system policy related to this is that if the IRB has deemed it greater than minimal risk, the physician has to consent. So,
okay. I mean,
I'm at Spartanburg Regional Healthcare System through Upstate Carolina NCORE.
Yeah, and I'm at Geisinger. Yeah, but yeah, happy to follow up and.
Yeah, I mean that's maybe something that a little above my head right now, but we certainly can look into this.
Yeah, we consented our first patient, and we have our next 4 on deck, so we're looking for ways of making sure we have a good flow in place.
Yes.
So.
I mean, I completely agree with you that to get a physician in the room to do this is going to be very, very difficult. Yep. And this is not a treatment trial. I mean, we have to understand that the toxicities, we're not talking about drugs and all that is accrued. And, you know, we'll certainly work with you and help you and see if we can navigate this in an acceptable way.
Great, thank you.
I'm going to stand in for Deb Bruner just for the final comments. I think it's really, you know, obvious to me that the FORTE team, and I give great credit to Kristen and Cheryl and many others at the NRG ops sites and the SDMC, they've put incredible amounts of effort and work into making this trial as accessible and as superbly running as possible. These videos and the educational brochures and the Spanish translation, all of this, depicts a tremendous investment on part of the investigators to design and implement a trial of this size and this magnitude to run as smoothly and as efficiently as possible. I think, as Jeff pointed out, we are at 80 patients per month, pretty steady over the last 5 to 6 months. That's great, but we need more centers and more sites. And I can tell you, when I hear that Geisinger has 4 in the wings, I'm very happy, and I know that Dr. Ertem at Spartanburg is very committed to getting more on board. We certainly need to be aware of any issues and problems. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me that things have to be done differently in Spartanburg than the rest of the country. And so we have to kind of put our heads to this and see if we can make it work. But I want to strongly encourage the sites that are out there that have signed up, and recruitment is still just nascent, to get on board. And sites that haven't joined, I really encourage you. This is an incredible opportunity, and the stars are aligned to really do something special. Thank you.